Hey everyone, welcome to Review Africa with Justine, a show where we look back at the interaction of the African continent, its people, and the Western world through the lens of a certified African resident, still reeling from colonial shock. Me. Before we get into this episode, let's pause at this incredible photo of Senegal after they won the Africa Cup of Nations. You'll need that little happiness to carry you through this episode. Today's feature story is the tragedy of West and Central African countries as they relate to France. No, this is not about in Paris. That would require a fire bit to back it up. This story is one that has been boiling over decades, and it's perfectly summarized in this meme. For almost a century and a half, France maintained a substantial colonial empire in Africa. Lucius and Cookie would be jealous because this empire stretched from Maghreb through western and central sub-Saharan regions. Though direct rule ended in the early 1960s, French influence over its former colonies continued. Some call it neocolonialism, the French call it work ethic. France has attempted to maintain a hegemonic foothold in Francophone Africa through political, security, economic, and cultural connections. Attempted is an undercutting descriptor for a pillager extraordinaire. Come on, these people have been excellent at it. A round of applause for colonialists who found ways to both serve their interests and keep a lasting bastion of prestige associated with legacy of past mastery. Starting us off in this journey of plummeting into the abyss is the imperialist monetary policies from Paris that French African colonies continue to endure. These policies are so tactful in setting countries back that they continue to cripple domestic economies and undermine democracy. Another pause here to say undermining democracy would be a great apology to a book for the West. By the early years of the 20th century, the French held most of what would become their colonial territory in West Africa, including present-day Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Benin, Guinea, Ivory Coast, and Niger. And in more recent years have brought them all together into what is now known as France's World Cup winning team of 2018. They were all about getting to work, maybe more than Brittany, to foster production of groundnuts and cotton where appropriate conditions were present. In a bid to line their pockets from all that hard work by other people, they imposed taxation as a means of inducing participation in the cash economy. Where crops could not be grown, they gently nudged people to migrate to wage-earning areas. Would you look at that? France, darling. It looks like you understood the relatability of migration and wages back then. Why are you scared of the concept now? Keep that same energy, mon ami. Although slavery had been abolished in Europe and the New World during the middle part of the 19th century, some forms of servitude continued on the West African landscape. Their whole stance was the same as an intern in most companies, which is close to zero wages is better than no wages. In their pursuit of continuing to gaining more from whatever the Africans were going through, the French often looked the other way in order to ensure the success of their programs. Why stand up for human rights when you can stand on a pile of money, right? The French colonial encounter in West Africa was driven by commercial interests as the political administration and the economic interests were fairly uniform throughout the colonial period. Little was done to improve the lives of West Africans, although attempts were made to provide minimal health and educational services. Their CSR, colonial social responsibility, was clocking at least one school and hospital per countless atrocities for balance. In a feat of irony, more than 1 million African soldiers contributed to the defeat of Nazism and fascism in World War II. That should have been an opening credit reel to equality and respect, but that contribution is often ignored and underestimated by France, and France has always taken for granted the fact that Africans could be asked to help again in case of any military threat or war expectation. Because war is exactly like herpes. It never goes away, and you need all the help you can get. After World War II, France came back with refined culinary tastes of colonial control. Just like French cuisine, it was innovative, sophisticated, but most importantly, future-proofed. The French assembled a colonial pact that took control over the economies of West African countries. They took possession of their foreign currency reserves, #the money is the motive. They controlled the strategic raw materials of the country, #all about the sauce. They stationed their troops in the country with the right of free passage and demanded that all military equipment be acquired from France, even taking over the training of African police and armies. #home is where the gun is. Side note, does anyone know if hashtags are still relevant? I want to know so I can take over some of them with the energy of a French colonizer. France required that French businesses be allowed to maintain monopoly enterprises in key areas of water, electricity, ports, transport, and energy. Nothing major, just the utilities at the core of modern existence and operation. As a way to encourage progressive and free trade in the region, France not only set limits on the imports of a range of items from outside the franc zone, but also set minimum quantities of imports from France. You might think this possibly isn't happening anymore. Take a minute to remember that picture of Senegal winning AFCON because, unfortunately, these treaties are still in force and operational. In Niger, for instance, the royalty rates were set up to benefit France's state-owned mining company Arriva and its subsidiaries. Over the past 50 years, the secretive, powerful African cell has overseen France's strategic interests in Africa, reporting only to one person, the French president. African Cell is such an obvious title for an illegal entity. They should have workshopped some other names, for example, Barrier Reef or Ninjas for Paris. Consequences of policy dependence led to dependence on the French economy, dependence on the French military, and the open door policy of French private enterprise.
Welcome to Panafricanism Insurance. We come to you faster than your landlord at the end of every month. Here at Panafricanism, we believe in covering everybody, including our former colonies. France Afrique Insurance believes in taking just a piece of your hard-earned money and resources and setting it aside for the benefit of every country, but most importantly, France. We believe if we can take care of us, we can take care of you. Subscribe to France Afrique Insurance today. We secure our future so you can depend on us. Service only available in French West Africa and French Equatorial Africa. Terms and conditions are mandatory. Too bad, you already signed.
Some African leaders boldly stood up against the unending imperialist tendencies of France, but their resistance was generally met with a stronger contestant: death. And France has never hesitated to eliminate presidents who posed a threat to their plans. You can't start a revolution against the French. That's their thing. France has consistently connived and been in collaboration with other Western powers to assassinate African presidents they deemed a threat to their interests. Presidents like Thomas Sankara, who denied being under France's influence, was eliminated in an assassination plot that France masterminded with the aid of Sankara's close friend and associate. Name will not be given. Here is a list of West African presidents that were assassinated by France since 1963. The SDECE, DGSE, and DST are three French intelligence agencies that have been active in doing dirty work that encompasses coups and assassinations. This level of organization and collaborative effort is a great inspiration for anyone struggling to write a villain story. French crimes in Africa don't just go straight to the shooting, that's amateur hour. They start off with misinformation campaigns that focus on control and military propaganda. You know that thing that carries away your aunties on WhatsApp. By the time they essentially wipe out your leader, you kind of bought into it like your parents or older relatives telling you to go get your shoes so you can head out together before they abandon you and start funding your trust issues. France maintained their grip on Africa through their CFA franc monetary system, which prevented former colonies from attaining economic independence. CFA, which directly translates to French colonies in Africa, is a currency named after oppression and was used to create financial stability in the region. Besides being forced to pay a colonial debt, 14 Western and Central African countries, that's Benin, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Guinea-Bissau, Equatorial Guinea, Chad, Congo-Brazzaville, and Gabon have their national reserves held by France in France's central bank. The amount of abuse that former French colonies received were working at several colonial rates per minute. These countries were asked to put 50 to 65% of their foreign currency reserves in the French treasury. That's over half their money. But to properly secure the bag, France asked for an additional 20% for financial liabilities. If they need more, they would have to borrow it from the French government at commercial rates. Why not just ask 100% of people's lives in these countries to shut down, and if they could just find a way to collectively cease to exist? This level of financial piracy and cutthroat swindling is only second to what billionaires have unlocked. These African states are French taxpayers, but their citizens are not French and do not have access to public goods and services their money helps pay for. French people have been living off the wealth of African countries and have been doing so for over half a century. This is such a reverse sugar daddy situation. France got themselves a very poor wealthy sponsor, out here posting on the gram in paid partnership with poverty-stricken African citizens. The pepper icing on this sand grain cake is that these countries are obliged to ally only with France during situations of war or crisis. This problematic rhetoric is the reason French presidents and ministers are greeted with never-ending protests whenever they visit their former African colonies. The role of French security policy in Africa has long been recognized as a critical factor in African politics and international relations. French involvement in Africa has worked against African interests as French intervention continues to deny African countries political freedom in order to sustain their current social, economic, and political conditions. It's the human centipede ridding these countries of their agency and resources. In fact, policies portrayed as promoting stability and development can be factors of instability, dependency, domination, and subordination. For instance, when Guinea demanded independence in 1958, France unleashed its fury by destroying schools, nurseries, public administration buildings, cars, books, medicine, research institute instruments, tractors. Animals were even killed, if only there was a way to involve PETA activists. They also banned and poisoned food in warehouses. These are just simple territorial gang tactics perfected by cartels in other parts of the world, but why would it be big news when it's an actual government using it on innocent citizens of another country? These acts were meant to send a message to other colonies that the consequences of rejecting France would be high. France was taking rejection like an abusive guy who you said no to once, and he ends up with a crazy wall and your family's bones in his backyard. In March 2008, former French President Jacques Chirac said, "Without Africa, France will slide down to the rank of a third world power." Chirac's predecessor François Mitterrand prophesied in 1957, "Without Africa, France will have no history in the 21st century." Kind of a wonderful self-ban from presidents who knew what their country's true worth was. A mediocre superpower being held together by military equipment and unfettered access to someone else's uranium deposits. Over the past few years, France has faced sharp criticism across its former colonies in Africa. The criticism is rooted in a feeling that colonialist practices and paternalistic attitudes never really ended, and that's because they haven't. You can easily understand this by looking at Niger's story. Social media posts, radio shows, demonstrations, and word on the street have propelled these conversations to the forefront. You can see just how messed up everything is live from someone's kitchen or a Tuareg on their nomadic journey losing livestock to radioactive dust. Tipping over to desperation, there have been reports claiming that France might be working with jihadists to steal gold. In Mali, where for almost a decade, French soldiers initially came at the invitation of the Malian government, they have tried and failed to stop the spread of armed Islamist groups by giving "fighting terrorists is so hard" energy. France stands accused of disrespecting Mali's highest officials through a recent coup attempt. Now they're effectively being chased from the country and other West African countries alike. They are blamed for sanctions imposed by the ECOWAS aimed at trying to get the military government to commit to handing over power, with France assumed to be the group's puppet master. The French are also blamed for their failure to stop an insurgency that metastasized and spilled over Mali's borders, destabilizing a vast stretch of arid territory known as the Sahel. This level of bumbling idiocy is unbecoming of you, France. You used to be so good at pushing coups. How are you letting your talents go to waste? Many Africans maintain that the French have been at the front line of enslavement, colonization, and raping of their continent by stealing their gold, diamonds, and other natural resources. They also maintain that France's colonial tax is bleeding Africa and feeding France. Numerous resentments have built up against France due to the political interference and armed interventions, with one of their biggest failures being the legacy of the Rwanda 1994 genocide. France has good reason to seek to improve its image that's mostly a black hole right now. Current President Emmanuel Macron is pushing to end Françafrique and its horrible policies, and while his PR campaign with the continent is improving, there are areas where they're still failing big time. France's commitment to letting go of the reins and giving their former colonies political and economic sovereignty remains to be seen. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share, and don't forget to like this video. It's the best way to support this channel. You can directly support this series Rear View Africa with Justine by becoming our YouTube member, Patreon, or donor. And remember, Africa is watching.